Okay, I would like to thank to Robert, Aaron, Elizabeth, Julio, and Elizabeth for their presentations. And right now we have a few minutes to talk about the ideas to discuss, to have questions or comments. So please, there is a mic over there. Javier has it. Go ahead, please.
Sí, muchas gracias a todos los ponentes. Tenía una pregunta y quizás acompañada de un comentario al padre Sostin, muy a propósito de lo que ha dicho comentando las palabras iniciales de Juan Antonio. Yo creo que realmente a Suárez no se le entiende sino como radical e inicialmente teólogo. En ese sentido, teólogo, filósofo y jurista es exactamente la cualificación, digamos, profesional de esta gran personalidad teórica. Por lo tanto, ahí consiento absolutamente. Una cuestión, seguro que consiento en prácticamente todo, pero como ha puesto un esquema muy reducido o muy sintético, la cuestión es la siguiente: la teoría de la relación trascendental que Suárez hace suya y que en una perspectiva, usted como dominico lo sabrá bien, no tiene cabida. Mi pregunta es la siguiente: ¿hasta qué punto no es sino dentro de una perspectiva de sustancialización de los principios en donde la teoría de la relación trascendental tiene cabida? O sea, la relación es un accidente y como tal guarda intrínseca relación a una sustancia. Por el contrario, la relación trascendental está pensada fundamentalmente no para entidades, sino para principios constitutivos de las entidades. Entonces, esta es una cuestión que me ha interesado mucho por diversas razones. Desde luego, esa doctrina tiene su fecha de nacimiento en torno al siglo XIV y no va más allá. Solo a partir de ciertos autores, grandes teólogos y filósofos tardomedievales del siglo XIV, hace su irrupción esta doctrina. Entonces, la pregunta es, la doctrina de la relación trascendental en relación a la cuestión de la cristología desencadenante de las disputaciones metafísicas, ¿cuál es? Y hago un breve comentario porque digo a los colegas y a compañeros que Suárez concibe, y así lo deja escrito, el inicio de un trabajo que llama Disputatio metafísica de essentia et existentia et subsistencia. Introduce 3 términos. Y este trabajo anunciado nunca se concluye porque en la elaboración posterior de ahí va a resultar precisamente las Disputationes Metaphysicae, las 2000 páginas de la edición de Vives. O sea que el fundamento teológico es innegable, en ese sentido toda la razón. Entonces, la pregunta. Y en cualquier caso, a los demás ponentes, muchas gracias por sus ponencias que me han parecido realmente muy interesantes a todos.
Bien, gracias por la... el profesor Prieto, hace 3 años atrás, acaba de publicar un libro excelente de Avicennas a Heidegger, a Suárez, no, de Avicennas a Heidegger, creo, ¿no es cierto? El título. Su título.
Suárez y el destino.
Suárez y el
Suárez
destino.
El destino de metafísica es una concesión a Heidegger, el Schicksal, no el destino.
Sí, que recomiendo leer.
De Avicenna a Heidegger, sí.
En la revista que le mostré hay una recensión al libro. Ahí él tiene el buen, bueno, para mí, buena luz, buen tino de mostrar el origen cristológico de las disputaciones metafísicas. Esto es un punto que no está suficientemente remarcado. Y es desde ese punto donde yo he querido comenzar y elaborar mi desarrollo y mi investigación. Respecto a eso, lo primero, ciertamente no solamente teológica, sino cristológica, antes que trinitaria. Y esto es muy importante para la teoría, quizás puede iluminar una discusión posterior respecto de... Me parece a mí que antes, usualmente la teoría de la relación, que era una de las categorías del ser, el prosti, ¿no es cierto?, desde las categorías de Aristóteles adelante, ya con San Agustín en el De Trinitate, comienza a substancializarse, si podríamos llamarse así, y con Tomás de Aquino ya podríamos decir, aparece, bueno, con toda la analogía. me parece que el punto de partida aquí es distinto, por lo menos desde donde yo alcanzo a verlo. No desde la cristología tanto, sino no de la Trinidad tanto cuanto como de la cristología. La cuestión consiste fundamentalmente en proponer una teoría más competente, más simple, a la multiplicación de sustancias en Cristo, a partir de la definición de Boecio, porque eso se atiene a la cristología de Gil de Roma, que intenta interpretar a Tomás de Aquino ad literam. Tienes la esencia concreta, tienes la existencia y tienes la subsistencia a la persona. Tres sustancias. ¿Ah? Después eso se matiza con Duns Scoto, ¿no es cierto? ¿Ah? Muy importante para Suárez. Y después vuelve la revuelta, es Cayetano, nuevamente considerando la esencia y la existencia como verdadera res. ¿Ah? O de alguna manera, ese es para mí, me puedo equivocar, el contendor en la disputación 34 sobre la personalidad en Suárez. Y en ese punto me parece que la subsistencia requiere ser considerada desde este marco súper trascendental. Yo sé que es la utilización dado que aparece una sola vez en todas las disputaciones, el término puede ser no quiero ocupar la palabra forzado, pero lo puedo ocupar, digamos, decir, puede ser acomodaticio quizás. Pero sí creo que leyendo el conjunto de las disputaciones metafísicas, Suárez reconoce un grado de abstracción distinto a el grado que interpretaban como abstracción trascendental los escolásticos posteriores a Santo Tomás desde el Veritate. Es decir, ellos decían hay 3 grados de abstracción, el tercero es el metafísico, es el que abstrae las propiedades comunísimas del ente. Y Suárez lee esto y en alguna parte dice, hay que sostener, para poder explicar que en el ente, en la sustancia concreta, por ejemplo en este vaso, donde la subsistencia se identifica con la sustancia, para poder entender que pueda ser posible que haya algo como este vaso, que no es este vaso, sino la humanidad perfecta de Cristo. Es decir, con esencia y existencia, porque es perfecta. Si no, le faltaría la nota máxima de perfección, que es la existencia. Y eso es dogma de fe, el Concilio de Calcedonia. Para poder entender eso, hay que recurrir a una interpretación de la trascendentalidad, podríamos decir, superior. Ahora, si esa interpretación atiende a la sustancia o los principios de la sustancia, suspendo mi juicio.
Perdón, dejemos, hay otras preguntas y les voy a pedir también a los ponentes que respondan no largamente, sino que sencillamente, y después en el almuerzo podemos tener un diálogo más largo. Jacob.
Thank you very much to all of you for this fantastic panel. I have a short question mainly to actually Robert and Elizabeth, whoever has an answer. There is another famous parecer by Suarez in which he backs Aquaviva's decree on excluding Conmaranos and Jesuits of Jewish ancestry after the 1595 congregation. So that goes a bit against his liberal attitude towards these elite Moriscos and against also the typology. I keep being very puzzled about this because I very much go into actually your interpretation. So what are we left? How can we understand Suarez's decision? Robert Marx was unfortunately not here, but he doesn't dwell on it. He basically says it's just self-hate and self-deceit, but he doesn't analyze the text. Do you have any idea why he has this negative attitude in the limpieza de sangre debate, rather than having this liberal attitude he seemed to have for the Moriscos?
Thank you for that. I need to investigate this more. The only thing I could think of offhand is he was always stressed obedience to authority. So Aquaviva would have authority. So even if he disagreed, he would acquiesce and show, he would receive it cum obsequio. So that might be a possibility. I know Carlos Noreña wrote an article quite a while ago suggesting that Suarez himself might have been of Jewish background.
It's 100% sure.
Yes. And so this would make him sympathetic to that whole question of blood. But for los Moriscos, los Marranos, the Jews, I just don't understand. This would be a particular question, so it might have been just receiving authority cum obsequio.
Okay. I think it has to do with nobility, right? The military orders also excluded people who did not have purity of office. So if someone descends from a Jew that happened to be a merchant, that's not considered at the top of the social hierarchy. So I think these exclusions were also social. They were also class-based. And so I think him supporting an exclusion of a group that was not noble before might help to explain. Because the Granada Venegas are so extraordinary that they kind of spend all of this time proving their nobility by many different means, serving the crown in war, as well as many other ways. So
Suarez's own family did the same thing. Suarez's family did the same thing. They became very powerful in Granada.
Yeah, I would like to read the Parecer.
Offices,
yeah, I have not read that Parecer. I should read it and compare, because that's a very interesting question.
Thank you.
Okay, Janina, please, and then maybe we can take two more questions. Janina and Daniel. Okay, you can say the questions and then they can answer.
Just a brief question for Aaron Pidel. Thank you so much for all the papers, but I am especially appreciating your reading of Suarez on religion, and the reading that you make was religious as a virtue, but I don't know. I would like that you give more insight on what kind of virtue is religious for Suarez, what kind of classification of religions he has, and also I like to know if he uses the notion of affectus as virtus affectiva in the context of the religione. That sort of.
Before the question, the answer, sorry, we are going to have the next question, okay? Together.
I will expand on your questions. Is this religiousness connected somehow with the notion of attention? Recently, I've read parts from De Religione on attention, on oration, praying. And this is fascinating passage, because he comments on Summa Theologia of Aquinas, but he is much more detailed in his analysis of attention, namely division of attention. He mentions the examples when people praying, and at the very same time, simultaneously, they think of other things. It happens very often, and we all know that. But he is so detailed, so phenomenologically detailed. It's fascinating what one can read, And of course, it's connected with St. Ignatius, spirituality somehow, which I don't know. And I would be really grateful to anyone to speak about that, you know. But you know, do you think that it's connected somehow, this emphasis on subjectivity in the definitions of religiousness with these notions of attention?
So, yeah, to those points. So first of all, in terms of classification, thank you for your question. He classifies religion, just as Aquinas does, as one of the parts of the virtue of justice. And because, he explains, but because justice has to do with paying a debt to the person to whom justice is owed, he considers the debt we owe to God as the principal debt of all things. And so by worshiping God, we render him the homage that's due to him, and so it falls under the idea of justice. And of course, we can become more just in the sense of being more disposed to render what is due to somebody through habitual action. And so he thinks for this reason that we can become more religious, in the sense more just towards God, the more of ourselves that we can become, that we are disposed to render to him, including our affect. So the more that our feelings, and of course because our attention is guided by our feelings to some extent, we can exercise our affect in such a way that it becomes more trained on God, and our attention becomes more continually present to God. And so this is part of the idea of why we meditate, so that we can have a fund of those feelings and train our affect, but also why we do external rituals, because by doing things, we actually shape our inner affect. And he uses the word affect quite a bit, which is not a word that's part of, it does come down through the Franciscan tradition more, but it's not a word that Aquinas uses very much when talking about the virtue of religion. But it's a word that in its Spanish forms and also in its Latin forms and translation, Ignatius uses a lot in the spiritual exercises and in other writings. And so I think that he uses this word affect as opposed to the Thomistic terminology to create a conceptual link between the Thomistic virtue of religion and Ignatian spirituality, to show ultimately that Ignatius is an exemplary representative of the Thomistic virtue of religion, against his Dominican detractors who are saying that he's not being sufficiently Thomistic and Orthodox.
Okay, I'm going to give two more, because of the time, we are going to have two more questions. One of them is mine, because I'm the moderator. And the second one, I'm sorry, but it's Pablo Font. He was asking to have a question. I have a question about Suárez. Es que estaba la otra chica primero. Okay, we are going to have three questions because the public is asking. So you were talking about Aaron, and Robert, you were talking about the relationship between Suárez and his ideas and the Muslim world. And I would like to know if there is a way to understand in an Ignatian and Jesuit way his relationship with the Muslims. I'm not talking about only about the general way to understand the interreligious dialogue. I will say that not very carefully, but I would like to know if there is a way to see that Suárez is impregnated by the Ignatian ideas, the Ignatian spirituality. Pablo? We are going to put together three questions.
Okay. Thank you very much, and congratulations for all of the members of the panel. My question is more a reflection about the spectacular presentation of Professor Robert Fastigi, because it's very interesting also that Suárez thinks that when the ruler is also it's not Christian, is heretic or is a pagan, also he can be he's a legitimate ruler, and I think it's a very interesting position in which there is a change with the opinion of Francisco de Vitoria, I think, which is a very interesting. I don't know how to say it in English. This position in the philosophy of religion has a very important impact in political philosophy. And I don't know if you have read about this question, about this issue, that I think it's very, very interesting. Thank you.
The last question, your name is?
Catherine Kuiper. This is primarily for Robert and Aaron. I was wondering, tying on the idea that you mentioned, Professor Festigi, of that the children of heretics are not culpable for their parents' sin, and then what Father Aaron mentioned about degrees of religion that you can approach to there can be more or less honest religion. And I wondered if you thought there's any possibility that because of the amount of time that's now gone on since the Reformation, so that you don't have that sense that this is something that could be resolved, or perhaps these different ecclesial communities could be brought back into union with Rome. So this has been going on for hundreds of years now. Could there be some kind of idea that these now present possibly a fourth category of yes, heretic, but they've continued for so long, they're almost their own religion now, distinct from the Catholic Church, and that you could maybe fold them into this idea of closer in degree to the Catholic Church than, say, an infidel or an apostate, or if that character of baptism that you mentioned is so absolute and final that really, maybe for him, he couldn't really admit of that.
These are very good questions, and I'm very honored that you would ask them. About Islam, or his view of Muslims, I think it has to do with a sense of a type of natural awareness of God that human beings have. And Suarez is quite aware of that. Today there's people with animosity towards Muslims because of these terrorists. So some say, well, they can't worship the same God. But Vatican II was quite clear on that. This, nobiscum, adorant unum Deum. That's what it says in Lumen Gentium 16. So it's something we do together. And Paul VI was quite clear about this. And I found one passage in Thomas Aquinas in his Contra Erroris Graecorum et Saracenos, where he also says they believe in God. This is when you have natural theology, that follows that the belief in one God is something natural. I think that's maybe something behind it. But his specific references to Muslims are not numerous, But I'm going to be looking more. I have the Opera Omnia now. I'm just going to go through it. Regarding Pablo's question, I think he was aware of the scripture that God wishes everyone to be saved. And so God has to look at people's culpability. And I think that this was a great achievement of that, of the period, of the Baroque period. It wasn't just Suarez who thought of this. Albert Pigius, he also had said that the faith has to be proposed to them in a way that would prompt them to agree. But in terms of the historical question that was raised, why he couldn't accept full freedom for the Protestants, I'm still trying to figure that out. I think it has to do with the mindset. These are still Catholics, and there's still a hope we could bring them back. We could see this in the Defensor Fidei, which I think, where is he, Professor Penner? He has translated parts of that. So that he says there was still that hope. England has separated from the faith. We're going to get them back, and then he was so upset with King James, you know, and so there was still this mindset. I would just say this, there's a type of residue of this even in Catholic canon law, that the church would claim jurisdiction over deciding who had a valid marriage and who didn't. And so that if someone, let's say, a Catholic woman wants to marry a divorced Protestant, the Catholic tribunal would say, we have the jurisdiction to adjudicate on that Protestant marriage that broke up. So I think there's a residue of that. But it took a while, just the way history works out, you know. But I think Suarez was still living in that mindset, as I mentioned, of the wars of religion. And it did affect them. But he was much more generous to the non-Christians. Yes, I'm sorry.
Maybe just to add to because your question about whether there's anything specifically Ignatian about Suarez's attitude towards Islam or other things. I would say that one thing that Suarez seems to think is very Ignatian, and that I think often maybe contemporary interpreters of Ignatian spirituality tend to emphasize less, is this idea of subjection to God as being one of the most important aspects of religious affect to develop, so a sense of one's creatureliness and of the majesty and of the distance of God and so forth, although not exclusively. And secondly, this idea of developing that through asceticism and through acts of external profession of this subjection to God. And so I think he thinks that this is a very key part of Ignatian spirituality. And I think those aspects are also aspects that Islam tends to emphasize a lot in its own religious traditions. And so I think that these things might have sensitized Suarez to what was good and properly religious in the sense of the virtue of religion from his own Jesuit background, would have made those aspects of Islam more recognizable to him as being part of the virtue of religion than perhaps to some other people. So.
Okay, I'm sorry, but this is we're just on time, so I'm so sorry. You can ask them later on during the lunch. Right now we are going to have lunch. The lunch is going to be at the cafeteria, and you can go to the cafeteria through that door, okay? You don't have to go all the way around, but you can use that door. It says no exit, no salida, but you can go there, okay? This is not a trick. Thank you very much.